Hey guys, it's James here. So, just gonna decide to film a video on some content here. Anyway, so a topic that is coming to mind is dealing with addiction. Okay, dealing with addiction. Addiction could be addiction to stuff. It could be an addiction to money. It could be addiction to a certain behavior. Addiction it deals with anything that you can't seem to overcome on an emotional level, right? And rooted in all addiction is an emotional attachment. Okay? So, if we were to replace the word addiction with attachment, that would be a more accurate way to describe the energy that you are experiencing. All right. The addiction component, we're not talking about a physiological addiction, and there is that physiological component, especially if you have an addiction to something that's physical, and it has a change in your biochemistry when you take that chemical or you take that whatever it is, all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And you have a biochemical addiction to that because you have developed the habit. Your body is now conditioned to crave that thing. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the emotional attachment that comes with addiction. And this is a component that a lot of people overlook when you're dealing with an addiction. Okay? So a lot of people focus on what you can see. You know, you're physically doing these behaviors, you're physically doing these things. You know, whether you're smoking, taking drugs, or you're alcohol, whatever it is, right? They're focusing too much on the physical component and the physical expression of something that is going beneath the surface. And there are various factors that do that, but you know, when I was going through topical steroid withdrawal, it was a process of releasing the attachment that I had to the topical steroids. That is what that process was. And not only did I have to deal with the physiological change of my body having to go through the process of releasing the toxins, releasing the stuff, releasing all the things that I've accumulated over the 20 years that I'd been taking the topical steroids, but I had to release the emotional attachment that was attached to that process of relying on it, of needing it, of the fear around, you know, if I stop using this, then what's going to happen to my body? Am I going to be like this forever? And then the fear of the unknown, of walking into the unknown, right? So I'm raising this as an idea and a concept for you to grasp on, for your mind to digest on, to percolate just a little bit, to ask yourself the question of, am I really attached to things? And this behavior that I have that I'm trying to let go of, do I have an attachment to this from an energetic, emotional standpoint? You know, there's another factor that goes into here. A lot of people talk about limiting beliefs and self-limiting beliefs, but really there's an identity that you have built up that's attached to this addiction, right? And this identity at a fundamental level needs to change. Okay? So until you change that identity, until you can shift that, right? And it's not going to happen in a day. It can happen in a day, but it's not, for most likely, right? You have to work at it. Until you shift that identity, fundamentally, you will revert back to that state of addiction. Or you will replace the behavior that you're doing with a different behavior, but you will still be addicted to a particular type of expression. Okay? So, I'll give you an example. Someone who is addicted to smoking, and they say, you know, I want to stop smoking. Okay. So they go, I want to stop smoking. this is their intention. Very good intention. They're like, okay, I want to stop smoking. I've been smoking for a while. I want to stop smoking. Good. All right. But they still see themselves as someone who needs to do something or require some external stimulus in order to, quote, cope or deal with the stress. Right? So then maybe they'll stop smoking, but then they'll pick up something else like nail biting, or they'll pick up something else like drinking alcohol on Friday night, or they'll pick up something else like, I don't know, like going out on retail shopping, right? Spending all their money. So they will find a way to still deal with the underlying issue or the underlying identity of, I'm not someone that's capable of actually dealing with these issues. I'm not someone that's capable that can overcome. Like, they haven't changed their fundamental image of themselves of, I am someone who has discipline. I am someone who can overcome. I am someone who takes challenges and converts them into opportunities, right? This at a fundamental level needs to change. If they don't change that identity, then you can change the behavior, but then it's going to manifest and express itself in a different way because the identity is still the same. You still see yourself as a certain person. You still see yourself as a certain way. You still see yourself as someone that needs an outlet, that needs to deal with it in a certain fashion, that needs something external, okay? So the reason why I'm bringing this up is that I'm getting you to think about, all right? To really just think about, to really think about in your own life. Take something that you have a challenge with getting over. The first question you have to acknowledge is, or you have to ask yourself is like, am I addicted to this? Am I attached to this in some form or another? Is this behavior serving me in a certain way? Even though it doesn't, and even though I don't like it, even though I know that I feel like I don't like this behavior and I want to change, but at some level, doing this expressing it in this way is serving me to some degree, right? And how is that serving me? What am I getting from it? What kind of security, what kind of safety, what kind of certainty, state of reliability do I get from doing this thing? And what needs am I trying to meet through this expression that I'm not being met somewhere else, that I feel like that I'm lacking, right? So these are some questions you want to be thinking about that, and just going off of that. You can overcome your addiction, right? You can. It's possible. It is possible. What has been done, what someone else has done, you can do also, right? Someone else has done, you can do also. You can do it. If someone else in your exact same position, or even worse position than you, has overcome that same thing, you can do it as well, right? You can. You have the ability. You have an innate ability, an innate power. You have greatness within you. You have the ability to overcome. And not just overcome, but to thrive, to use this as the stepping stone, to use this as part of your story, to use this as part of your journey to getting you what you really, really, really want. A lot of the times when you have an addiction, you have an attachment, an unhealthy attachment, there's usually a lot of guilt, shame, embarrassment. There's a lot of negative stuff that's attached to it, right? That is not actually specifically related to the behavior that you're doing, right? There's a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and self-punishment that comes from, oh, I let myself slip again, right? Oh, I let myself do this again. Oh, and none of that stuff is actually attached to none of that stuff is actually related to the actual behavior itself. All of these other things are subsequent thoughts and ideas and patterns that come up when you think about how you broke your agreement, how you broke your commitment, how you broke your promise to yourself, how you broke that part of yourself that you almost like you hate You hate this about yourself. And it's okay. Like, it's not something to be, it's not something to shun away. It's not something to push away. It's not something to hide behind or cower away. You know, I know someone in my life that has a habit of, you know, whenever something difficult comes up, they have the inability to confront that issue. So their coping mechanism is to basically just ignore it as if it's not there, right? Well, just because you ignore it and try to forget it, it doesn't make it go away. In fact, when you don't address it, when you don't confront things, when you don't look at them, when you don't honestly, not to someone else, it's not like you have to even say this to someone else, this is within yourself, right? This is within your own mind, within your own psyche, and within your own psychology, right? If you don't address something, if you can't acknowledge it, then it festers and grows. It's like the weeds in the garden, right? It's like the weeds in the garden. If you don't deal with the weeds, if you don't look at them, they're going to grow, and it's going to take over your garden, right? It's going to take over all the stuff that's happening. So your inability to confront these core fundamental issues, on the emotional side, right? Pushing it away is not gonna fix it, right? You can ignore it for a while, but it's gonna bang at the door, right? Again, right? It's gonna come, right? And it's gonna bang at the door even louder 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now. That's kind of how the universe works. It's kind of how life works. It's like you got a problem, you haven't dealt with it, you haven't processed it, you haven't allowed the energy to flow through you, you haven't allowed your consciousness to deal with it. It now contracts and stays within your field, it stays within your energy, and it becomes a block, right? And so the way to deal with these things is actually address them, is actually look at them. Okay, I don't like what I'm seeing, that's fine, right? At least you acknowledge that you don't like what you see, right? But don't ignore them, don't push them away, don't avoid them, because you can't avoid them. These things are a part of who you are. They're a part of your energy, and some part of you is emanating that, is leaking that energy out, and is reflecting in your physical reality and reflecting in your physical life, giving you, hey, you gotta look at this. Like, that's what it's basically saying. It's like, hey, this is something you gotta have a look at, right? And I'm not going away until you deal with it, until you not just deal with the behavior, right? It's not the behavior, it's the energy that traps that. It's the energy that keeps that there in your life, that then expresses through your body and expresses through your mind and your body into a specific behavior, and that behavior is what you call the addiction, right? So you have to deal with the underlying energy that is attached to that expression of that behavior, right? And if you don't deal with that underlying energy, because number one, you avoid it, you ignore it, you push it away, you shut it down, you compartmentalize it in your mind, you create an area for it and you just shove it away in a deep dark hole, you never look at it, right? That's what a lot of people do, which is fine. Right? That's what happens, right? So they split their psyche and they split their personality, they split their mind into different things to compartmentalize these things. And this is what happens when you get traumatized, right? You split it because you don't know how to process it, and then you put it into like this little cubicle over here in the bottom parts of like the nth layer of your subconscious mind, and it just kind of festers there and grows because you just never dealt with it, right? You never cleaned it up, right? It's like cleaning your room. You get all the garbage, you put it into a box. You put that box in the garage, and then you never look at it. The box is still in the garage. Your garbage is still there, right? You have to go through the stuff, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna throw this away, right? I'm gonna keep this one. I'm gonna throw this one. So you actually have to go through the process of opening it up and being like, okay, well, what am I gonna keep? What do I like about this stuff, right? What do I want to get rid of? What do I don't like? Absolutely don't like it. But no, what we do is like, oh man, there's all this stuff in this box, right? I'm gonna do it later, right? I just can't deal with it right now. There's too much stuff in this box. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just put this garbage in a box, pull all my stuff, and then throw it in the garage. And yeah, I'll leave it. Deal with it later. Right? 10, 15, 20 years. Right? Now that box is multiplied into like 50 boxes in the garage. I was like, oh my God. Where did this come from? Right? So this is kind of how it works. So we need to go in there and actually just pull the stuff out and kind of like deal with the energy, right? And some people think that, like dealing with the energy is like, you actually have to know what's inside the box. Interestingly enough, you don't actually have to know what the content is inside the box. You have to deal with the underlying energy, meaning that, I'm trying to figure out how to explain this. The content of what made it happen, the content of how it got there, the specific context, the specific situation that created the mess is irrelevant. Okay? So the specific, how did you make the mess, is completely irrelevant. The fact of the matter is the mess is there. The fact of the matter is what you need to do is actually just go through it and be like, what do I want to keep? What do I want to get rid of? What do I want to keep? Right? That's what you need to go through. Specifically, how you got there doesn't even matter, right? So this is what a lot of people do. Is like, again, they talk about like problems, like, I let my bedroom get out of hand. I just had this habit of like collecting all these things, and I just over time I just built up all this mess. And they keep talking about the story about how they got the mess, but that takes away from the process of you actually going in the box and deciding what you want to keep, right? So this is the same thing, right? You don't need to focus on how it happened, how the thing got traumatized, how the thing is there, how you created this pattern. The fact of the matter is you have this pattern, right? You have this box. You need to get rid of it. You need to process through it. And until you process through the energy, it's going to remain there until you actually process through it. So the processing part is the critical part of letting it go. Letting go of the attachment. Sometimes we're really attached to the box that we have. It's like, oh man, this is my stuff, right? I collected this stuff over so many years, and I can't get rid of it, right? This is how we see our problems sometimes. This is how we see our attachment. We don't know the type of person that we're gonna be without our stuff. It's like, oh, if I don't have this pattern anymore, if I don't have this addiction anymore, if I don't see myself as someone who smokes, if I don't see myself as someone who drinks, if I don't see myself as someone who does X, Y, Z, whatever, fill in the blank, whatever addiction attachment you have, you're like, I don't know who I'm gonna be. And there is an underlying fear of letting go of who you are, right? There's an underlying fear of letting go of who you are to actually overcome these challenges. And interestingly enough, we will sacrifice our livelihood, we will sacrifice our health, we will sacrifice our relationship, we will sacrifice our wealth, we will sacrifice all the things that are good for us to maintain our identity, right? Whether that identity is good or bad. Whether that identity is good or bad. And this is the underlying issue. This is the underlying issue. So, some things to think about. Some things to absolutely think about. And this is what you do need to think about if you are attached. If you are dealing with attachment, if you are dealing with that. So you absolutely do need to think about this. And you can overcome it. You can absolutely overcome it. You got what it takes. God, what it takes to change your life. You know, even though the grass is not greener on the other side. Even though the grass is not greener on the other side. You can have a magical experience. You can have a magical garden. And the freedom comes from not having anything to hold on to. Not having anything to lose. And in actuality, there is nothing to lose. There is nothing to lose at all. So, this is the key. I want you to really understand that this is the fundamental thing that you need to digest. Think about it, meditate on it, percolate on it, integrate it, understand it. And the pivotal thing that you do need to get to is to acknowledge if you have this attachment. You need to identify what is the underlying energy here. And it doesn't need to be in a specific thing like, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm not this. Oh, I'm not this. I mean, these are all just labels these are all just placeholder labels that we put on trying to describe what we're feeling, right? And these are good labels to use, but sometimes we get too attached to the label, right? So you do need to describe it, and you do need to write it down, but use it in your own words, right? Use it in your own words. Describe this. What is it that you see? What is it that you hear? What is it that you feel? What is the energy that is here? Right? What is the energy underneath the behavior? And when you identify that, you will have an aha moment. You will have a cognition. You will have a realization. It's going to allow you to overcome that. Love you guys. Hope this helps. My name is James, and I'll see you soon.